The infield! The infield is real! That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The infield is real. After 84 goddamn years, we finally have news on Arknights Endfield. We just had a live stream talking about the upcoming second beta, showed off all new improvements and changes, as well as new characters, new gameplay, gave updates about the factory system, as well as the gacha system, and more. I will be going over this entire live stream, giving my analysis, thoughts, talk about the good, talk about the potentially concerning, things that weren't really said by the developers, but then again, not all information was present in this stream, and we will only know the details come the start of the beta test. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So right off the bat, they dropped the trailer. We got to see some new characters. The music, as always, slaps, though debatably you could argue whether Arknights still has the better music or if Endfield still has time to shine. Either way, it's too early to tell how good Enfield's music will be, but from what we heard as of now, it's slapping the same. Also, the accents you hear on the characters, this is one of the things I love about Arknights and their voice direction. Any character that represents a certain nationality, their English voice will always have an accent attached to it. Whether it's Russian, Italian, Spanish, etc. You feel like you've been catered to whenever there's a new character that is meant to represent a place where you come from. This section talks about how they added different dialogue choices that would branch the story out. I'm kinda skeptical on this, not really in a bad way, kinda like in a whatever type of way, because there are other gacha games that say they do this, but it doesn't really branch the story into different kind of ways, you know what I mean? It just feels like it will eventually fork across the same path. Maybe it could change like strategic events, like how you approach an enemy, how you go about doing a certain mission. If it's done in that way, I think this is actually very interesting, but until then, it's a wait and see type of deal. Yeah, they show how your teammates can find chests for you. Really interesting, kind of similar to a compass, but a visible compass in the form of your allies. A slight nitpick though, I don't like how you have to individually pick up the items after you open the treasure chest. Kind of reminds me of old Genshin days, and still to this day Genshin has it. I know Withering Waves used to have it, but eventually they made it auto loot. It would be much appreciated if they just made it auto loot in the future. I do appreciate that the teammates also pick it up for you, but I think for overall efficiency it would just be better if you simply opened the chest and you got everything instantly. And yeah, we have two new 6 stars being introduced in this beta. The first one being Ardelia. For any OG Arknights fans, you'll know her as AF Yala. And for the second one, we have Arknights, who looks to be a brand new character we haven't seen before. Ardelia is a support character who specializes in healing and debuffing enemies. Her ultimate feels very reminiscent to OG AF Yala using her S3. And then we have Arknights, who looks to be a DPS character. I love how her ultimate transforms a weapon into a scythe. It's a personal favorite thing of mine to have scythe wielding characters. And here we have a new class being added in the beta test, the Vanguard class, along with 2 new operators with it. The first one being the 6-star Pogranichnik, who OG Arknights players would say this looks like a very young Helga. I gotta say, his animations is superb. It reminds me of Kalcharo from Withering Waves in the beginning of the showcase, but then after he deployed his ultimate, I was like, no, this is way better than Kalcharo. Now, this isn't taking shots at Withering Waves, guys. I'm just stating my own personal opinion. Don't attack me. It is what it is. And then we have the 5-star Lesh. I gotta say, I love the fact that he uses his fishing rod in combat. Gives him a very unique, gimmicky style. Like, he definitely fits the part of a 5-star. He's not too overly grandeur, spectacular, but he looks fun to play. And to my surprise, they had more 4 stars in the game. Like, guys, this is so good for early game to build your team, because these characters, I can almost promise you, will be the first set of characters you get all their dupes for. Because I remember in the last beta in the gacha, when you pulled characters, you didn't get weapons from their gacha system. You only got 4-star characters. So you will definitely be seeing these characters every time you do a single or a temple new gacha, and guaranteed to max them out on their potential. They'll definitely get replaced as you get to later game, but it's really good to have a strong starting character early in the game, especially if they want you to experiment as much as you can, or you need a certain type of character to make a certain team comp work. Overall, I think this is a really good thing to have for this type of game, and even though they're 4 stars, they really did cook with their animations, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. And here we have the list of all the characters that will be available in the beta. There's 2 things that I want to mention about this list. I remember in the last beta, our standard 6 stars were Ember, Lifang and Gilberta. I saw later on in this video that it does look like Gilberta will be considered a limited character, so that just leaves Ember and Lifang as your standard characters. Who knows, maybe they can change way later on, but it looks to be the case for now. And the second thing I've noticed is that all the characters that were previously 4 stars in the beta are now 5 stars, which means all these new characters that were 4 stars looks to be the only 4 stars we'll get. Not really a bad thing in my opinion. It kind of gives all the previous 4-star characters who had unique looks to them a bit more specialness to them, because they do look different. And then you look at these 4-star characters that were introduced to us, and it's like they're all wearing the same uniform, they're nothing special, got that really generic look. I do think they look good though, but they definitely have generic painted all over them. Here we have a list of operator classes and damage types. It does look like the guard archetype has been completely reworked, being specialized in physical damage. So it looks like any character we'll get in the future that's a damage dealer and deals physical damage would be allocated to the guard archetype. I could be wrong on that, but that's how it looks so far. The striker, I believe, is a new archetype in this beta. Exploits physical artifacts inflicted by other operators to unleash the decisive attack. I believe, if my interpretation of this archetype is correct, for anyone that's knowledgeable in Genshin Impact, the striker character would be considered the character you would want to trigger the elemental reaction. In Genshin Impact terminology, in this case, it would be the guard character would be your setup character to inflict debuff, and the striker character would be the character that is the payoff to exploit that debuff to do massive damage. Then we have the Vanguard, that's also a new archetype. These ones are created restoring skill points to help teammates skill casting. I believe the Vanguards are going to be really good for those teams that are very skill heavy, skill hungry dependent, yada yada. Hopefully they don't end up way busted than how a certain group of Vanguards are in OG Arknights. Here's hoping. Defenders though, they look to be a combination of what medics are in Arknights and an actual defender role. I remember whether it was the previous beta or the technical test, we did have a medic character who for some reason is still has not been mentioned at all, almost like the developers forgot about him or are cooking him way more, completely reworked him, whatever. But yeah, it looks like the defender class will be the actual sustain for healing, shielding maybe. I did notice that the one defender had an ability to parry, and it looks to be exclusive to that class. I'm not sure, but if it is, in my opinion, I kind of think that's a interesting decision to have made for this game. Though, since we went over Adelia's kit, we kind of have a feeling that the defender class won't be the only archetype that's capable of healing. Like for anyone that does play Arknights, you'll know that half the archetypes in the game has some sort of healing capability to heal allies. So I wouldn't expect that one day in the far future of Endfield, all these archetypes will eventually have characters that have some healing capability, whether it's for themselves or for all ally characters. And then we have our 5 damage types: physical, heat, electric, cryo, nature. Very simplistic, just 5. Maybe more will be expanded upon in the future, but we'll see how the balancing has to go. Now this physical statuses really piqued my interest, because I'm not going to lie to you guys, playing Genshin Impact for so long has conditioned me to believe that physical element is just straight up bad overall. But I'm very happy to see that Arknights Endfield put some depth into the element, since it's treated differently from the 4 other elements, adding its own debuffs as well as consuming their debuffs to deal physical damage or make the enemy take more physical damage. Like, this itself gives enough depth to make more than one type of physical team, and I think that's a really interesting way to have approached such an element that feels kind of generic or normal. It stands on its own 2 feet, and we'll see how it goes in the beta, whether they actually cooked with it or if it needs more time to cook in the oven before release. And now we come to the arts reaction section, and for any Genshin lovers that love the elemental reaction system in that game, this system will feel right at home for you. Maybe a lot more overwhelming, but once you get past the learning curve, I definitely think it will feel at home for you. There are its own cons to it. I know one con that I believe that Genshin's elemental system has is that you eventually come to a point that your team archetypes are solely centered around what reaction it does. It could very well be the same for Endfield, but I trust the developers will cook a lot more with the system. Like, they have enough experience with Arknights, constantly introducing new archetypes, new damage types. I believe that they can cook something up with this in the far future. And now they're showcasing the dodge system. Now, I will be completely honest with you guys. Initially, I was one of those people who did not want a dodge button in the game. However, that was the time that the combat system was still tactical. And since the last beta, when they completely overhauled the combat and decided to go for a more action approach, that was when my opinion changed, and I said this game needs a better dodge system. And fast forward to today, the dodge system looks very impressive. Now, I know some people will say, now it feels like Genshin or Wuthering Waves, and to that I say, those 2 games weren't the first to implement a dodge button. What I can also tell you guys is that there are definitely ways that the developers can make mechanics that you cannot dodge. Like, people think that you can dodge everything in the game. It is theoretically possible if it's designed to be that way, but the developers can actually implement attacks that are undodgeable. There are games that exist out there that have attacks that you cannot dodge. You have to like block or do a specific mechanic to protect yourself from that attack. Like, don't worry guys, let the devs cook. They will know how to make sure you can't dodge everything. And I mean, there's even a cooldown to the dodge button, so you can't just spam dodge to save your life. Don't worry guys, it's not gonna be a dodge fiesta. I can almost promise you it won't end up like that. And then they also showed body weak spots, interesting. Completely reworking older characters, love to see it. Can't wait to see how the rest of the other characters have been reworked, if they did do reworks on them. And here we got a combat showcase of both the physical team and the arts team. And yeah, it looks very overwhelming, but I mean, we are just watching how they play. I feel like once we learn how to do it ourselves, it's gonna be an absolute cakewalk. Maybe even simplistic. Could just be like a oh, just press one button all the time. Who knows? But either way, I feel like once we learn how to do this, it's not going to be as overwhelming as we see it right here on the screen. And here we get to the part that would make or break the game for certain people: the base building. I won't lie to you guys, watching this segment of the live stream, the only thought that was racing through my mind was, did the devs listen? Are there blueprints? And thankfully there was. And I know this is a very controversial topic. There's a group of people that did not want blueprints, and there's another group of people that did want it. Personally, I could see both sides of the spectrum, but the reality is the blueprints were designed very well. The devs knew how to implement the blueprints, and I'll explain it in a bit. But for anyone that's still against the idea of having blueprints, let me paint you a picture. I am a full-time worker. I come home, I eat, I do my chores, and I probably have between 2 to 3 hours to myself before I'm so tired I have to go sleep for the next day. Spending that 2 to 3 hours learning how to build a base, there's not really much account progression done if all I'm doing is learning, making mistakes. Like, don't get me wrong, I personally enjoy learning from my mistakes and understanding these systems and all that, but I just simply don't have the time to waste nowadays. And there's a big majority of people that feel the same way, which is why these blueprints are a very clutch feature to have for us people. Like, sure, maybe one day when we have a lot more time on our hands and we are genuinely interested in the base system, we'll take the time to learn of its systems and all that. But for the majority of our daily lives, we simply won't have the time to make mistakes and make our progression to a complete halt. It's just simply not satisfying. So with that out of the way, the devs were very clever about how they implemented the blueprint system. So if you guys didn't notice, you still need specific amount of items and machineries crafted for the blueprints to work. This means you still have to put in the bit of effort to get the materials and to craft. The only thing you are actually skipping out on is the placement of the machinery on your base, as well as the lineup of items and how the systems work. I feel like that part of the procedure would have taken the absolute most amount of time. Like, simply gathering the materials and crafting, that takes little to no time at all, unless you had to actively go out of your way to find the materials. But from what I've seen in the last beta, it's kind of a one-time thing. Once you find the materials, you set up your mining machines and it's a-okay, A for away. So this was a very clever way the devs approached the blueprints. It's kind of like, we'll help you, but not all the way. We'll give you just enough to give you the streamlined version of your base, which means that if you ever felt like you wanted to optimize your base even further, min-max, there's a lot more room for you to do just that. And I feel like this approach caters to both sides of the spectrums. Your casual players, your players that simply don't have time, or they simply do not care about the base system at all, and your factorial players would spend hours upon hours refining the base until it is at its absolute ultimate peak. So I believe that this should make everybody happy. I hope it does. Here they showcase the spaceship, kinda like your mini dormitory, your reception area to showcase your 6-star characters as well as your medals, the usual gacha things. And here we have the new event, the Edge Space Salvage. I'm not sure if this is the same event they had in the last beta, because I did hear some mixed receptions about the weekly. I'm assuming this is the weekly. From what they described it does sound very interesting, but I kinda have gripes with weekly events, in the sense of they can either be long or tedious, or if it's a roguelike, they kinda just streamline it to the point where I ask myself, why make it a roguelike because you eventually get to a point where you can just, if there's buffs that you choose from, it's streamlined in a way that you could just ignore all the buffs and still clear the weekly, which kind of makes me think, damn, this feels like a very wasted type of mode. I hope it's not the case, or maybe they found a way to make it very quick, not long, not tedious. Only time will tell until the beta starts. Here we have the list of optimizations they made. Controller support is always a good thing. I'm personally a controller player. For the life of me, I cannot play on keyboard and mouse. Here we have a showcase of the game on mobile. Looks really clean. Hopefully day one players on mobile don't experience a lot of lag or bugs, because I mean the game looks very polished, but you know, day one bugs are always a thing. We have reached the meat and the potatoes, the thing that everybody wants to know, the gacha system. The developers makes it clear that gacha for characters and gacha for weapons are two separate features. Gacha for characters, there are 3 banners. First you have your beginner banner, which is called the basic headhunting. What's interesting to note here is that you can only do pulls on this banner by progressing story, so this is kind of the developer's way to counteract rerollers who are trying to reroll for a specific standard character. Then your New Horizons headhunting, that is basically your standard banner, and then your charted headhunting is your limited banner. Unfortunately, the system did not change. I know there are people that complained about it, other people are okay with it. Personally, I was kind of like about it. Not really saying it's a bad thing, not really saying it's a good thing. The make or break factor for me was looking to see what the pool economy would be per patch. Would the developers give us enough pools, or would it be a case of Genshin Impact where we are just starved for pools? Also, unfortunately, we do not know the banner rates. We don't know if it changed from the last beta. We will only know once the beta releases. Hopefully it changed. Hopefully it doesn't get nerfed to Genshin levels, or should I say to Hoyoverse levels, 0.6%. If it's 1% or above, I feel like that's an absolute W for us. Now, more details on the charted headhunting. Now, unfortunately, the last beta had it that if a limited character goes away, they would go directly to the standard banner. This is no longer the case, and instead, once the limited character goes away, they will still be in the limited banner for 2 more banners until they actually go away, temporarily, as the devs say, suggesting that they will be frequently reran. Time will only tell how frequently that is, because more characters get released. Eventually you'll get to a point where you can't simply rerun one by one, maybe you have to do multiple banners, so on and so forth. What's interesting to note here is that Yvonne and Gilberta is on the first banner and Gilberta on the second banner. This is most likely because there is obviously no limited characters that came before Levitain, so they needed 2 characters to fill the pool. I believe this will be the go-to banner for rerollers to reroll on, either for Levitain, Yvonne or Gilberta, and then save afterwards for the future. Now for the weapon banner. I remember being very okay with the system. It was kind of an interesting approach they did with it, and it looks like they buffed it even more, adding milestone rewards for the pools. I also remember how easy it was to get a 6-star weapon, so this banner doesn't seem like a real issue compared to your Hoyoverse games with the weapon banners. And here we've come to the battle pass that they showcase. Now, I really love how they did this battle pass. It's essentially like Fortnite. For anyone who doesn't know how Fortnite's battle pass works, you basically buy it with the premium currency, and once you finish the battle pass you get full refund on it. Here it's a full refund plus a bit extra, so it's good motivation for player retention, gets you to keep playing the game because you know your efforts will be fully rewarded. I just love the system overall. And last but not least, we've come to the beta test release date, 28th of November. A little less than a month away. I'm so excited for this beta. I can't wait to see all the changes and improvements they did with the game. Hopefully this time I can get into the beta to really test the game out for myself, because I am really excited for this game. For any of you guys that are interested in signing up for the beta, I will leave the links down in the description below for you guys to sign up and give it a try yourselves. Hopefully you guys also get in, because you have to experience this game for yourself. And then we come to the global pre-registration milestones with the 5-star operator Snowshine. I remember Snowshine was really good in the last beta. Hopefully it's still the same. Maybe they didn't nerf it to oblivion, maybe they buffed her. And the social media milestone, they reward a 5-star weapon. I'm not sure if this is her kind of signature weapon, but either way, to have a starting character and a starting weapon both being 5-star is really good in my opinion. And that's gonna be it for this live stream analysis, guys. If there's anything that I did miss, please be sure to mention it in the comments. If you guys want to see more future videos on Arknights Endfield from me, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.